the person who, I had prepped and didn't say what I really had hoped that they would say, you know what? They'll learn, live and learn, live and learn. And at the end of the day, God still has my back. Hello, welcome to the Overwhelmed to Resilient podcast. I'm Dr. Phyllis, your host. Today is episode 15. 15 episodes, 15 weeks. Thank you so much for all of your support. In today's episode, I want to discuss how to create New Year's resilience from last year's triggers. Wow. This has really been on my heart. Question. Have you noticed that in the midst of all the hats that you wear, all the roles that you play, all the questions you answer, all the people you serve, all the needs you meet, you love it? God has wired you to be a caring heart, a person who loves to be helpful, who loves to be of service, because you know how much God has blessed you. And you know that the Bible says, to much given, much is required, right? And so your heart is in the right place. Yet in the midst of it, you also find that there are times that your emotions just overflow. I describe it that my cup of emotions have runneth over. Do you ever have those episodes? Do you ever have those times where you're doing what you love to do? You're caring for your family. You're caring at work because you feel that God has called you to do that work. Even when you're dealing with the ups and downs of work and the craziness and the different personalities, God has wired you to care. You care. You feel so deeply about people, about doing what's right, about using your gifts to cause change in the world. Yet with all that being said, in the midst, you just find your emotions going off sometimes. Sometimes you literally snap. Let's say that most of the time, you're able to deal with things pretty well. But then there's other times that you're like, if one more person asks me one more thing, or maybe you don't even realize it, that something happens that usually you would be able to just roll off your back, slide off, you just keep it moving. Or maybe, unfortunately, you just kind of say, well, I'll just suck it up and keep moving. But something happens, someone does things or does a thing, or someone says something, and then just out of nowhere, you just seem to just snap. And your response just seems to just take on this monumental level of intensity that you later just feel kind of silly about. You're like, why did I react that way? Why do I know? Because I know, I understand. Because I have had to confront my triggers. One of the major stumbling blocks or speed bumps to our resilience is triggers. And often they develop over time because we just keep it moving. Our faith keeps us grounded. Our faith that we know things will get better in the future. Our ability to just keep it pushing, yet things are brewing inside. how this came full circle to me and why I have had to get very in tune to what triggers me is a couple things. Recently, I had a situation where something happened. And it was a situation, I had prepped everybody in the situation. I had anticipated what was going to happen. And I thought I had gotten all my bases covered and had spoken to someone who really was kind of held the critical piece of the situation. Prepped them, let them know what was coming down from my experience, let them know what they should say, just to kind of keep it brief. This is what I need you to say, and then we can move on with life. Well, lo and behold, the person said something else. They said something else, something that I was concerned may have muddied the water or made the situation more complicated. And I have to admit, internally, I think all the flames had gone up. I was furious. I'm not one who expresses that outwardly. And I'm sure many of you are like that too, is that, we've been brought up that we're very cognizant, we're very aware that people are watching us, especially when they know what our faith, that we are Christians. And so people are always watching and listening to see how we respond to situations. And I felt this a lot over the years because I always felt, be it as a leader, be it as a parent, be it in my community work, be it as a minister, that people were watching. And if I said something that was out of character, or if I did something, then that would become someone else's narrative about Christianity. And so I carried quite a bit of that and I also wanted to be a role model for my children because I knew when we were out and things were said or done, they were looking right, like, in my mouth, as the old folks would say, to see what I was going to say and how I was going to respond. And as parents, or grandparents or aunts or godmothers or sister friends or mentors, people are watching. And we have that added, right? That's another hat that we carry, the stress of making sure that we reflect God in everything we do or say. And hopefully you realize we're not perfect and we have to give ourselves some grace. So back to this story. I was fuming. And I did reach out to a friend. That's why it's important to have your close circle of sister friends or family that are your confidants, as Bishop T.D. Jakes talks about. There's three types of relationships. There are the comrades that you're against the same thing, but other than that, there's really no roots to the relationship. There are constituents, you're for the same thing, but still no, other than that, nothing. Then your confidants. They're your ride or die. They're your thick and thin. You can tell them anything. They got your back. So I went to my confidant and discussed it so I could kind of release a little bit of that fuming. And it still bothered me though. And I was like, and it caused me to channel some of that emotion into the bigger situation. And later, the situation was resolved and it kept bugging me like, Phyllis, why did you respond like over here at 180 degrees? And I'm not one to stay in a dark or gray place long. I just feel like life is too short for that. So I want to process it. I want to sit with it. I want to pray on it. And I want to move on because life is too precious just to stay stagnant in emotions that are not positive or help me get to where God needs me to get. So I sat with it and I realized that the reason this situation and the actions of that person really bugged me was because it triggered emotions from the past where I felt that I wasn't being listened to, that I had no voice, that other people were telling my story, but they weren't listening to me. They weren't asking my side of it. And once I was able to look at that and really see it for what it was, then I could let it go. And then I realized, you know what? The person who, I had prepped and didn't say what I really had hoped that they would say, you know what? They'll learn, live and learn, live and learn. And at the end of the day, God still has my back. And again, I realized that what really bugged me was I felt here's another situation where I did not feel listened to. And now I realized, I'm not putting up with that again. Right. And while, yes, I should not put up with that, it allowed me to move past the situation because I realized that it really wasn't about that person. Because again, I've prayed for that person and we move on because I said they live and learn. And I'm sure somewhere down the line, they're going to look back and say, oh my gosh. But actually, even soon, they realize what they did, even though they weren't listening, you know, um, to what I was saying and listening to my years of experience and the prep work that I had done in the situation to help. But, I don't lose any blessings. Pray for them. And as I said, keep on living and move on. But yet, identifying the trigger allowed me to move forward. Another short situation is someone was doing something to help me. There was a project that had come up and I knew I needed to get it done. And it's not a huge project. It's not a life or death situation, but it was a project that I've been invested in and working hard at. And this is in my personal, not at work or anything. And because I wanted to do it, I knew that I needed to do it. It's a project close to my heart. It's a part of my own personal development and emotional journey. Yet I wasn't ready to do more with it right now. I needed to kind of just put it to the side. And so someone was trying to help me. They were really had the best intent to help. They wanted to do something. They felt like I had done so much for them. So they wanted to help me. And they went on and did part of it. Again, I didn't go to 180 degrees, but for the moment, I just felt a certain way about it. And quickly I again stopped and say, why are you so bugged about this? What's that emotion? And really what it was fatigue, because there's been some other things going on in life and I've been dealing with. And so my first thought went to, this is something I know I needed to do. And I had been saying I was going to give myself a break and do it. And so by that person, my first narrative that came up was by them doing it, it was kind of like triggering the fact that I felt badly that I had not already done it. Now that's my narrative. That's my thought. The other person was helping me because they wanted to help. They love me. They appreciate everything I've done for them. So they felt like they wanted to do, they couldn't, a lot of times, people, those that are closest to us, they may not be able to say thank you back in the same way that we gave. Let's say that you've given money to someone. They may not be in the position to give that money back in the same way. Maybe you went out of your way to take them something or give them some other type of gift, or you help them out of a tough situation. And maybe they're just not able to give it back to you in the same way. Not that you expect it, but they want to do something to thank you. And so they want to surprise you. And so they do it. They do a part of it, or maybe they do what you said you were planning on doing. And if you're not careful, you'll take it personal that they did it because you weren't doing it fast enough. And you have your own reasons on why you haven't done it yet. Have you had that happen? And then you feel bad because you feel a certain way, and then you don't release it. So, you know, it's still kind of like this little chip that's on your shoulder, of this little cut that may get this little new scab on it. You get a little cut and it gets this new scab, but it never really truly scabs over. And those are triggers that are like little cuts. Something has happened in the past by word or deed or a situation where you felt out of control or helpless or hurt or disappointed. And until you address that trigger and really get down to why you feel a certain way about it, every time it may have a different person, different situation, different face, different voice, different name. But until you call it out, when someone says a certain thing, they do a certain thing, or they don't do a certain thing, it's like ripping that scab off every time. And you're never going to heal from it. So I ask you today, where are your triggers? How do they show up in life? Because if you carry the same triggers from this year, because when I'm recording this is during the holidays. And when this episode comes out, we will be in the new year. So I want to ask you, what triggers are you carrying that you haven't called out? You haven't called them out. You haven't given them a name. So you're fuming and you're trying to suppress it while you're doing all the things. I mean, maybe it's you're caring for a friend or a loved one, and you feel good. You want to be there for them. Yet you have moments that you get tired, or you have moments that you get frustrated, or maybe you feel like they're not doing their part for their health, or they're not doing their part You feel like you're carrying the weight. You're trying to like not only provide the care, but you're having to be the one who's motivating them to take better care of themselves. And then you kind of feel at times frustrated or short patient. And then you end up feeling guilty about it, but you never really address that this triggers me. And how do I need to deal with it? And until you call it what it is, it's going to continuously be a source of guilt. Maybe it's something at work where you feel like you are trying to balance work and you're trying to balance home. And maybe even there's things at home that are going crazy, or they're just busy. You're just trying to wear all the hats and you're on this treadmill and you're getting triggered at work, or vice versa. Maybe things are a little less than desirable at work. Maybe the stress of the holidays. Maybe you're having some interpersonal challenges at work with a coworker or a leader, and you just keep on going, keep on going. Maybe you feel you don't have a voice at work. You feel like you're the one with your nose down and you're doing, your head down and you're working hard, and, you because you know how you're wired, you want to do the very best job you can do. And you're working with other people who don't necessarily come to work with the same motivation and the same vision of work. Or maybe you've been disappointed or hurt at work. And then if you don't know that that's a trigger, then what do? The lines get blurred and you take it home. And your kid, your spouse, your significant other, or a friend says a certain thing or does a certain thing. And you're wondering, why am I so upset? And they're looking at you cross-eyed like, I just asked you to pass me the bread. I'm just making that up. Or I just asked for this. And you're wondering why you're feeling so upset or resentful, or because you're trying to carry everything. So what's happening at work is blurring the lines at home, or something is going on at home and then it's getting blurred over into work. And then what happens? You start feeling like everybody's at you. Or maybe you're volunteering in the community because you're dealing with people. Maybe you're dealing with things in church, and everything you get triggered. And you have to stop and call it out. You have to learn how to stop, ask yourself the question, why do I feel a certain way about this? You have to give yourself permission to just stop. I gotta, tell yourself, I gotta stop. I gotta figure out, Lord, help me figure out, why do I feel a certain way about this? Because triggers come from emotions, experiences that are important. They're not silly things. They're real life things that have happened. And you need to give yourself permission to recognize that whatever it is important. Because then if you don't deal with it and you just kind of move on or suck it up, you get that little scab on there that never heals. It's just like fresh scab that never heals. And then a thing happens or someone says something that's not really, again, it's not earth shattering. It's not life or death. But then your emotions are over the top because you haven't dealt with the real issue. So I ask you today, and I'm praying for you today, that as you're hearing this episode, if you feel like your emotional cup is runneth over, you're just feeling a certain way and you're just feeling like you're being triggered all over the place and then you feel guilty because you're doing what you feel called to do. You're loving, you're serving, but yet you're being triggered in the midst of what you're doing. You're not finding joy in what you're doing. You're not finding peace in the midst of doing what you feel you're called to do. Then you have to call it out. And my prayer to you today is that you take time to look at why you are feeling triggered. Get to the root of it. Grab a cup of coffee and be prayerful and go somewhere and just get quiet and ask the Lord to help you discern why you're triggered and deal with those triggers so that you don't carry that full cup over into the new year, and you'll be able to self-correct yourself real fast. When you start feeling a certain way, you'll be able to go, ooh, I'm feeling a certain way. Why do I feel a certain way? Let me go in a corner and really get to the root of the problem so I can let it go and keep it moving. So that's my prayer for you. I just pray for you. I see you wearing all the hats. You're awesome. You're loving. You're a hard worker. You're doing everything you can to be a source of light and change. You want to see people be their best. And in the midst of it, you have to take care of yourself so that your light will continue to shine. You will continue to be your resilient self that God has created you to be, that sometimes life will tarnish that or turn down that flame a little bit, but it's still there. And when you call out your triggers, you truly will continue to tap into your resilience. I love you. I'm praying for you. I pray the new year will be the best year yet. And even with everything that's going on in life, I know it can be your best year. I'll talk to you next time. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Love you much. Take care and Happy New Year. The best one yet. Bye now.